Good morning.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Good morning, good morning, good morning, Robin. Good morning, good morning. How are you? How are you?
I am doing well, thank you.
Ah, brilliant, 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 brilliant. So I was thinking, holidays and all that, especially Thanksgiving, it can be for some, it's more of a time of tribulation and travails and troubles and stresses than it is of anything else. Not that I'm assuming you're having this, but I am keen to ask just how did you connect with people over the holidays?
For me, I had an
Yeah.
awesome day.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. That's what I'm expecting. I'm asking because I'm expecting or assuming that there's, a goodness, a positiveness to the interactions, and just to emphasize it that you do have this and you have the ability to do so, and this is huge, no?
Yeah, it was actually, we had all said that I think we figured out that the last time that we were all together was in 2019. We came across a picture. And that was
Ah,
actually when my mother-in-law was still alive. And this was the first time where we have all gotten together. And it was just a really nice, no drama, no crazy. Everybody was
wonderful,
um
wonderful.
behaved. Let's just say everybody was
Yeah, yeah,
behaved.
yeah. Oh, that's good to hear. So it was a very big family gathering this year.
Yeah, our immediate is 15 people,
Oh, wow, that's
and
yeah, that's not small. Yeah,
all of us were there. And we
yeah.
just made a table. I extended my table with one of those folding tables, and we all were there together. It was a really nice time. And
Oh,
Patrick
wonderful,
flew in from
wonderful,
Italy. So, we were all there together.
wonderful. Oh, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. And you personally, in terms of interacting, you know, uh, I'm really just doing I don't know, like a check of positivity here. So just bear with me a little bit. It's just good sometimes to get perspective on oneself, which you might not otherwise get. And it's a way of being aware of where we at and how we've progressed, what we do, what we can't do, things like that. So I'm asking in terms of your personal interactions, when you had to interact one on one and stuff like that. How smooth and easy and fluid was this for you and joyful?
It was well, overall it was interesting because Kevin and I both had sinus things going on. Um and then I had female stuff going on.
Oh,
So, physically we had some I'll just call them challenges, or I shouldn't say challenges. I
yeah.
we had some bumps, but
Wow.
it kept us accountable versus
Wonderful.
potentially, using it for crappiness.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
And
Wow.
so
Wow.
Kevin, on Tuesday, I think it was, I have
Uh-huh.
shared with you all, about the potential for these deals with his work, and the one actually came through. And this is with that,
Oh, oh, oh,
not
wow. No, you
that,
didn't. You didn't say unless I'm not remembering, but
well,
um,
he has that, that property down in Florida that I keep saying, it's an anomaly because just all this stuff. And I remember one day just saying, you know what? It's an anomaly. This is an anomaly with everything that's happening with this particular property, and I don't understand what's going on here. So I paused, and I remember taking time to just, on my own, whether or not it was real or not, it doesn't matter. I just said to Kev, I'm just going to sit here and send blessings down there. I go, whether or not it works, it doesn't work, it doesn't matter, but there's an anomaly
Yeah,
going on here.
yeah,
And, I
wonderful.
did that whole this or something better, this or something better. And not with that particular property, but with the property around it that's going to be developed. There's actually a major deal was just signed on Tuesday
Oh,
last week.
wonderful. Wonderful.
So not necessarily that
Wonderful.
particular building, but with the property around it, something better came along.
Yeah, yeah,
But now it has to, come to fruition. So that's going to be,
yeah. Yeah,
this is
but
going to
there's
be,
movement at least the blockages
yes,
has been cleared. So that's fantastic. Yeah. Because that's all you need sometimes is to know which way it's going, right?
right.
And when things are stuck, it's when it's a problem. If it's not going to work, it's not going to work. Fine, you can let it go and move on, right? But that's fantastic. That's wonderful, 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 wonderful. Wow,
So now
wow,
his,
wow.
now his life could potentially get very busy. So again, it just
Yeah,
kept us accountable
yeah,
through the weekend, and and then having Patrick there and then having Kelly there, it just, again, it everything kept us accountable. And yes, we could have gone to crappiness and for moments of, and we
yeah,
didn't. We stayed
yeah.
we stayed right where we needed to be, and it was positive. It was all, I cannot complain. It actually feels weird getting up today because I'm like, okay, now what's next?
Oh, that's too wonderful. That's too wonderful. That's too wonderful. Now, the question I want to ask is, what about energy perceptions over the holidays?
For me, energy perceptions were, there was a shift in energy. I felt it.
Oh,
So I don't know if it was a collective. I don't know if it was personal.
yeah,
But it definitely felt like there was a shift. So I don't know if I got shifted because we were staying, I don't want to use the word balanced, but we were staying the course that we shifted into a different perspective now.
wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And how much do you think you make a difference by holding yourself, by holding your focus, holding your intent, holding
Oh, I think
onto
it's
your
huge.
moreness?
I do believe it's huge, and it's really interesting
Yeah,
because
yeah,
not only did I was I aware of my shift, I was aware of others who in the past crappiness would prevail, and
yeah,
it was shown that they have also shifted to a more impeccable, positive place. That's not to say that there won't be
yeah,
potential for shifting, but they definitely, from where they used to be to where they were, wow,
yeah,
we've all shifted together.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the thing is too, sounds to me like, right, that you aren't enabling the space for the crappiness, right?
No, but you know what, you just
You,
made me think of something that did happen to me. That was, wow. So last, not this past Saturday, the Saturday before, so we went up on Friday to uh go get Kelly from school for the holiday,
huh?
for the week. And I don't think it was Friday. I don't know. I don't remember if it was Friday evening or Saturday, but I think it might have been Friday. Let's just say it was Friday. I get a phone call from old friends of my dad's. and his
Oh,
wife. Now, they've reached out to me here and there, through the past couple of years. So when I see their number, I always, answer to give them, updates because they're calling.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
it's it was a shame because they called me and said, "Oh, hi, Robin. We're going to be in the area. We're going to Miami to visit family, and we're driving by Orlando, and we were thinking about visiting your dad." Now, I had a red flag up right there
Mm.
because nobody has visited dad in over 2 years
Wow. Beside yourself, right?
besides me. Nobody,
Yeah.
nobody's asked, nobody's
Wow.
anything. So I had
Oh,
a little bit of a red flag going on, but I
good,
said,
good, good.
then I had to check it. I had to check it and go, okay, where is this coming from, Robin? And I said, you know what? We have to stay the course. If they really do mean well, who am
Yeah,
I to say no to them visiting dad because dad has had nobody?
yeah,
And I had to check myself.
yeah, yeah.
Why are you being like, why are you feeling like
Yeah, but
that?
it's good to be cautious. I mean, it's good to be cautious. Rather be wrong on your caution than, be wrong on not being cautious. So, yeah,
Well, because right away I think about that brother that I tell you about,
exactly, exactly. Yeah, one
which
thing.
in the end, yeah. So all night it just sat with me.
Yeah.
And I could feel myself, that crappiness. I could feel like something's just not right. I don't know what this is. But
Wow.
again, who am I? So let me just let this go.
Yeah, yeah. But you got to
So
trust those things.
I give the address of where he's at. I give the room number. And what got me was that they said to me, "Oh yeah, well we talked to him a month ago." And I'm going, "How did you talk to him a month ago? He doesn't have a phone." And they said enough of a fake story that, makes you think, well, I can't even get through to the nurses and stuff to get a phone call set up, but who am I to, again, there was just enough of a red flag. So I called my aunt and I said, you know, there's just something that's not right. It's not sitting with me. But again, I don't want to stop them from visiting dad. And
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know, just sharing with her gave me enough nerve to say, you know what? This doesn't feel right. I am going to call them. I am going to call them and say, and find out what's going on.
yeah,
I call them and I said, "Did you get to visit dad?" And they went, "Oh yeah. Yeah, we went to visit him." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" And they said, "Yeah, he walked us out. He wasn't with a walker." Okay. Sometimes dad's been with a walker, sometimes he hasn't, but yes, and he talked about Zoraida, who was his that was his wife, the one that passed away. Yes,
uh-huh.
he talked about her. And I go, "That's funny." I go, "Because he has not mentioned her name in over 2 years. He can't remember what her name is."
Interesting,
But then
interesting.
again, they said enough to me that I'm questioning myself because I go, I don't know how dad would be if he saw them. It might trigger something different.
Yeah, it may trigger his brain. You can't say exactly. Yeah,
But again, it still just did not sit right with me.
yeah,
Something
yeah,
just, so I let it go and I got off the phone and I said, "You know what, Robin?" And I reached out to the nurse and I just said, "Hey, just wondering if anybody visited dad today, if you happen to know."
yeah.
And I didn't hear anything on Sunday when I woke up. Or no, Saturday. So it must have been Saturday. After I had all the conversation, everything was on Friday. Okay, so it was Friday. And then on Saturday, I do all this texting. And then I said, "You know what? I know who goes to visit dad a lot, and that is the hospice nurse." So
Yeah,
I text her because I hadn't heard from the nurse yet.
yeah, yeah,
And again, this is where that whole, like, how did you talk to dad? Because I have a hard time getting in touch with the nurse.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I text the hospice nurse And I said, I just
Wonderful.
want to let you know, just wondering if anybody visited dad yesterday. And I said, there's a little bit of a backstory with a brother that, we've had a restraining order
Yeah,
against.
yeah, yeah,
The
yeah. And if
hospice
somebody does
nurse,
come, keep an eye on them.
the hospice nurse actually got back to me right away and said that she got in touch with the tech and somebody else. Nobody visited dad. At the
Wow.
same time, I got a text message from the nurse. She said nobody visited dad. So they lied to me.
Wow. Now, why would they do that?
Exactly. Which then the one flag that I had is that I never knew that the one friends were from Peru also. So in my head, I went, this was a Richie thing. This
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
Richie
yeah.
trying to
Oh,
get.
oh, they got some scheme. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So, and again, because he probably needs money. So,
yeah,
yeah, so long story short, they did lie to me. So the way
yeah,
I ended it was I felt much better because I just knew that what I was feeling was correct.
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't have to question it anymore. It
Good for
also
you.
gave me that from now on, I will not answer to anybody, like nobody. I will let
Yeah,
anybody that I have a phone number for, which is really only one person now, they would have been the second if anything happens to dad. Um, and yeah, I just,
yeah. No, no,
I
no
found,
unsupervised visits. That's it.
well, I said, I'm still not going, and I talked to even the manager there. I said, I am not going to stop anybody from visiting dad.
Yeah,
Oh, and here, well, I said, I'm not going to stop anybody because dad has nobody. So if anybody wants to
right.
visit dad, by all means, I go, however, I will be informed if anybody, because
Yes,
it's all
yes,
computerized
yes,
now.
yes,
I will just be informed if anybody does go to visit him. But
yes.
one other thing about that visit, their question to me was, so do you take your dad out? And I said,
Yeah, see, they angling to do something with him, because
yep,
if they asking you to take him out, they have some plan to take him out. And I think the reason they probably lied was, well, we've gone to visit him, and then they'll, knowing how he is, maybe, they know you can't really check up on it, but it gives them like credibility with you. Yes, we've been going and visiting him, and they'll do this a bunch of times, and then they get familiarity, in other words, and then they can do whatever they want to do. So, yeah,
yep. And
wow,
the answer is nope.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I'm
If
aware.
they do call again, just say, Dad's fragile. So, and I'm the only one that he's been seeing, for at least the last 2 years now. It's only me that's ever visited him. So you kind of let them know that, hey, and then say, look, we can just arrange this when I'm down there. If you really want to see him, sure, no problem. Just come when I'm there. That's all, so that
Yep.
dad doesn't get thrown out and stressed, because he doesn't always remember people. So, but he does, he's familiar with me. So, just come when I'm there. If they're really serious and genuine, they'll say no problem, of course, because it's all about dad, right? You tell them that they can only come when you're there, that you'll never see or hear from them again.
Oh, I don't think I'll see or hear from them anymore because they know now that I know they lied.
Yeah. Well, how would they know? Sorry.
Um, I think just from the way I was asking questions, I was
Oh, oh,
questioning
I
her.
see. Oh,
The
oh,
way
oh.
I was questioning, like, that just doesn't seem
Oh, you
possible.
spoke to them. You spoke to them afterward. Ah,
Well, that's how they told me that, yes, they went to visit dad and they didn't.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So they
yeah.
out and out lied to me. So yeah, I'm done with that. That was,
Yeah, good, good, good. That's the thing. See, you do perceive differently, Robin, and that's the big key to it. Is this humble caution, right? But also it's a humble confidence. It all goes together, right? To trust your perceptions, but to also doubt them. See what I mean?
oh, definitely. Because I
Both
was, and
together, because, yeah, right.
And still, the old me and part of me was there where I was feeling this nervousness. And it took a lot for me to call them back. Like, well, this
Yeah,
is your
yeah,
dad. Why aren't you calling them back? Why aren't you questioning them? And then just reaching out to the nurses and stuff, I would have stayed quiet, not said anything, and I would have festered over that,
exactly,
or, woulda, coulda, shoulda. And this time I went, there's nothing to be
exactly.
afraid of.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what I mean. You trusting your perceptions, but you're also not being a blind trust, which means that you check them. This is key. This is key, right? You acting on the perception and you being impeccable to check it out because your perception isn't 100% clear. You have to check it out, right? So you have to know, even if you confirm it, that doesn't mean that next time you don't check it, because if they're up to something, that up to something can mean a range of things, right? So it's important to act, in other words, on your perception. And that's the point. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. Which you did. And you acted, like you said, before you might never have said boo or bah and not acted on it. And it's how you act, to act with that humility, with that caution, with that care, with, not assuming one way or the other. This is powerful. Not assuming that what you perceive is so, but not assuming it isn't so either. It's the key. Yes. In other
Yes.
words, not to just disregard it because it's a negative perception. And this, sadly, is what good people often do. They get these intuitive understandings, this direct perceptions, but they throw them out because, well, that's nasty. That's an ugly thought to have. If it's accurate, it's not nasty or ugly. It's simply accurate. Yes?
Yes. And that's exactly what happened, is that I, for the first time, was able to just say I was accurate. Not, and I didn't take it any further than that. So even after I found out it was the truth, I just said, okay, I know it's the truth. And I let that go. I
Exactly.
didn't start,
Exactly.
in the past, I would have had the habit of, I can't believe
Yeah.
this, and then started to make up stories around it.
Exactly.
I just let it be what it was. And I went with the
Exactly.
rest of my, and I went with the rest of my,
Exactly.
ending day,
Exactly.
and I
Yeah.
didn't have any issues.
Wonderful. So the key is that you are getting comfortable with the impossible, right?
Yes. Yes, because I'm not making it
Because
any more than what it is.
exactly. And that's the point. You're getting comfortable with the impossible being possible, but you're also not getting cocky with the impossible being possible, right? This is
Correct.
very key. So that's what I'm saying. This humble confidence is very critical. It's the impeccability. We want to always be impeccable. So this is very key, and we need to maintain our impeccability impeccably. So impeccability needs to be impeccably maintained. Something we tend to forget about impeccability, right? It's a quality we have, but we have to maintain it also, which means that you have to stay on your toes, in other words, right? Can't just say, oh, I've got it in me. No, you've got to stay on your toes. So anyway, this is about, when it comes to things like this, testing and verifying and following through, you get the clues and you get the alert, and then you got to act on it, which is what you did. It's fantastic, right? Very, very simple. And then also, strategy. Like I said, when in a situation like this, if we think about strategically, there's a lot that we can do. Like if you had said in the first place to them, oh, sure, you can visit that anytime. When I'm there, just let me know. I'll let you know when I'm going down again, and you guys can come and visit. Very simple strategy, right?
Yeah.
If you have those thoughts. So I'm just saying, to learn to think strategically is very useful. It's not always easy. It's always easy in retrospect, but still, it's very powerful to be able to do this. So, but useful. But again, as we go through these things, we develop the strategy. But the checking and the testing, and the key is you acted on your perception. That's the point that I'm really keen to emphasize. Yes, and to really celebrate that you acted on your perceptions. Now, look at with your clients. You've been doing it with your clients, right? You've been acting on those perceptions. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, you had a few of them. They came and you said to them, well, look, this is a bit different. And then you acted on it and it was wonderful. Yes.
Yes, I had my client on Wednesday that that the hand client.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then it was interesting because we actually had, it wasn't the hand, it was actually the foot. It was the leg.
Oh, interesting.
But it went a step further with sharing and choices and choosing. And there was a part of me that felt like I was potentially stepping out of line. But on the other hand, I had to sit with, it's still her choice. And it had to do with, she was sharing with me about how it is with her family and Thanksgiving. And we were just talking about choice on, well, this is your choice, either you go knowing this is what's going to happen, or you choose not to go and know that this could happen. But ultimately, it's your choice on what you want to do. And it felt like a very fine line sharing that type of information with her. And for me to know that ultimately it's her choice, but it was a really, it felt like shaky territory for me.
Mm, mm. Interesting.
Yeah,
It,
it really did feel like shaky territory in regards to more of a I don't like to use this word, but I guess this would be the only word to use, therapist.
role for you.
Yes, which is new
Uh,
for me.
yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I've never really seen myself as,
No, no, it hasn't been your focus at all. And yeah,
and I'm not saying that, in as a therapist in the word therapist, but I guess in that
right. Therapeutic.
yeah, where I'm in control of the room, so to speak.
Yes, you always are. You always are. You
And
have to be.
so, this is one of the things as we are going through what we're sharing, these past few weeks, is me starting to learn how to be in control of to know that I'm
Yeah.
holding the space in that room. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. You being in
it's a new
control of the
step for
room.
me.
Yes. It's not control in the sense of, how we might think of control, like teachers would control the room. It's not that kind of control. Not at all. You can control, lead by walking backwards, which a lot of people don't understand, but it's very powerful, right? But
Mhm.
it's control in the sense that you're setting the mood, you're setting the
Setting the
tone,
mood, yes.
right? And also, you are always going to be confident, no matter what. Whether you have a solution or not is irrelevant. You need to be confident that you will make an effort to come to solution.
Yes, and I guess that's really what it was
Yeah,
while we were sharing that, here it is, and but never gave direction on which way to, make sure, at least I think I made sure,
yeah,
there was no, I wasn't misleading. I was trying to be very careful on not misleading what I was sharing, but it was still an uncomfortable place And it happened a couple times with in a couple of different sessions where this is coming out more, and it's new for me.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. So again, be confident and know that, and trust. This is where your confidence comes from. It comes from your trust. Now, have appropriate trust. Just because you're doing something new and unfamiliar doesn't mean you cannot trust that you can do something new and unfamiliar. See what I mean? So yeah, it's going to be a bit awkward or whatever, but doesn't matter. You trust that you get through it. You trust that you can implement it. You trust that you're going to plus and minus, trial and error. You're going to figure it out. You trust in your doing, even if you don't know what it is you're going to be doing, right?
You could even
So
put
the
that with
key
that
to
whole
this
situation
is,
with my dad. That
say
was
again.
all new. Just the way I approached that situation with my dad was all new and unfamiliar, but
Exactly, exactly, exactly. So you trust not in your in the fact that you have answers ahead of time. Anybody who does this is a complete and utter fool, right? And you see people, even experts, get completely see their answers. Why? Because they trusted in the answers that they thought they had ahead of time, and then as things happened, they changed and shifted, and they had to adapt, and they got stuck because, well, I didn't prepare for this, right?
mm-hmm.
Even though they could have. But if they'd been a bit more flexible and open and trusted that they would deal with things as they came, no problem, right? So the key that I'm mentioning with clients, though, is that you have to have that trust in yourself, because that trust is what gives them security. If you think of it this way, now it's a very different logic, right? You need to have trust in yourself. Whether you have any kind of idea of where things are going or not makes no difference. You have to have trust that you will get there. Things will come. The universe is going to help you. You'll get inspiration. You'll figure it out. Whatever, imagination, whatever. You'll ask questions, whatever. But that trust is very important, because if you conveying uncertainty with yourself, your client's going to pick that up, and then right there, the major part of going to somebody for something, you've removed that from them, right? Even if your service is going to be good, if they don't have trust and confidence, it ends up being a waste of time. Yes?
Yes, it's interesting you say that, because last Monday evening I had a client at the acupuncture, and it was the other acupuncturist that was there. I could tell she just wanted to go home. And
Uh-huh.
I had one of her clients, and I was very, because of her wanting to get out of there, it really put me in an awkward spot where I felt I was rushing through with my client just to be
Uh,
done on time for her.
uh, uh, uh.
And then, I don't know whether the client's going to reschedule with me, because I honestly didn't feel that I was impeccable with my work, because I was too worried about trying to get out for this
Exactly. Exactly.
acupuncturist. That what I did do, though, was I mentioned to Tim, I said, Tim, in the future, if this happens, I'm okay with locking up. If you could just lock me in, I'm
Yeah.
okay with locking up afterwards, where you may be okay with doing that with your client. I'm not okay
Yeah.
with doing that with the client. And
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's not good. Yeah.
I felt bad, where I don't know. I mean, again, I hope she will reschedule, but I don't know if she will reschedule, because,
Yeah. You
you
weren't
know,
able to give her full attention. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
not able to give her the full attention that she deserved. No, that she deserved, that I felt she needed. Yeah, no.
Well, just trust the universe that it's a learning lesson, and trust that the
And I
client
did.
will
I
be
did walk out of
will
there
be-
going, old habit would have been, I would have held on to that. New habit was just I was aware of what happened.
Wonderful.
Um, if she
Wonderful.
comes back, I know how I will proceed the next time.
Wonderful. Yeah.
And if she doesn't, I've already mentioned that if this
Yeah.
does
Yeah.
happen again, this is how I
Exactly.
will
You've
approach it.
taken appropriate measures to deal with it. Yeah. You've
Yep.
learned. You've learned. That's always the key. However it turns out, from the universe's point of view, all the universe wants to make sure is that you've learned, right? Doesn't matter how things turn out, really. It's the fact is that you need to learn
But
because
wouldn't it
things turn
also
out for
be
all
that,
sorts of different reasons. So
but the learning side of it, isn't it also the I'm not holding on to the feelings that I would have before?
yeah.
Is that learning where I have learned,
Yes.
even with the thing with my dad, that
Yes.
I'm not
Yes.
attaching a
Yes.
story
Yes.
to what I'm experiencing. I'm just
Yes.
experiencing it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. I mean, think of it. Let's zoom out, right? And this always we want to do is zoom out and look at things from overview perspective. So you deal with it from inside and from overview, right? And from multiple perspectives. It's very key. But that zooming out is absolutely critical to get that overview perspective. So what you are doing in these situations is, in the past you would have just reacted and acted on feelings, right? Whatever those feelings were, feelings of insecurity, feelings of doubt, whatever, right? And those feelings would typically in the past have, maybe not for you, but I'm being more general here, have limited you and inhibited you from your full range of action, right? Now, however, you are, when something happens, you, instead of just feeling and having reactions that are feelings, and those feelings are coming from beliefs and ideas and all over the show, you are deliberately thinking about it, and you're thinking it through, and then you are acting regardless of how you feel. It's a very, very different process in play. Yes. So you have your feelings and you take them into consideration, like with the visitors, right? The people who called to visit your dad, right? They
Mm-hmm.
called and you had a feeling, right? But you didn't just act on that feeling only. You went and checked and tested it. In other words, that's based on thinking, on discernment, in other words, on awareness, on understanding, and on getting understanding, right? So the feeling was there to stimulate your awareness, which it did. And you said, hey, wait a second, something's up here. And then you sort of went, you started thinking about it. And then, the 2 plus 2 started to fall in. It's like, wait a second, nobody's visited him in 2 years. Now suddenly want to visit. And then, with what was his name? The brother, that vibe came in. And so then you took measures, you took action because you thought about your feeling. Yes. See the
That's
difference, Robin?
interesting that you say that, because you said feelings stimulate awareness.
Yes. Or at least to me, in situations like this is what we hope will happen. For many people, they don't. They just stop in feeling the feeling, and then they don't really go much further than that, right? They just react according to the feeling alone, and that's dangerous. Yeah.
That's where I was kind of going with it. So then feelings can stimulate awareness, but
Right.
most times we get
Right.
feelings and we kind of get stuck in an immersion.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. That's why I'm saying, that's why I'm pointing this out. That what's different now is that your feelings aren't keeping you in a feeling belief loop bubble and an emotion bubble. No, they are shifting you to thinking about the implications of the feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a very different thing. So now the feeling in this last instance, now the feeling was a starting point, not the be all and end all of stuff. right?
Right.
And that's the whole point from the universe's point of view. The feeling, in other words, is a perception, right? And this is all it is. It's a perception. It's not a conclusion, right? So we have to act on that, and we need more data. We need more information. Now, it may be that you get feelings sometimes, and I suspect you will get ones, which they're so definitive that yes, you're going to check them anyway, just as a point of impeccability. But they're going to be completely definitive, and there's no doubt about it. You'll know 100%. And if you get enough of those over the course of time, after a while, you're going to say, look, every time I've checked these out, they've always been so. So I can trust it, right? And that's very key to develop that trust. But if the feeling has uncertainty in it, then you need to trust more, right? Check more. So in this case, the checking made all the difference, right? So your feeling was correct that they were up to something, but the checking confirmed it. And having that confirmation is absolutely critical in this case, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Makes all the difference. Makes all the difference. Because now you can act with confidence when it comes to them. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. So again, you see, over time, you can refine your ability to know your own feelings because you've had previous verification and justification. But as you learn this new world, new language, is very, very important to test and check and verify so that you can build that confidence in your feelings. Yes. But the
Yes.
key step is that you're acting on these feelings. You're thinking about them. You're taking action on them. You're checking them, testing them, verifying them. You're not just, well, it's an ugly thought and you throw it out. And in other words, you throw out something good because of self-doubt or inappropriate application of goodness. Yeah. So this is a big deal. It's a very, very big deal. It's astonishing, how sometimes small incidents like this are huge. We don't always see the hugeness. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. This is a very big deal. This is a very, very cool big deal. Very, very cool big deal. So the key with these feelings is, yes, over time, you are going to learn the language of, well, I'm saying feelings, but they're perceptions, which is slightly different, right? And if you think of them as a perception rather than a feeling, then because a perception has that connotation of, well, it's not exactly 100% clear. And treating it in that way, even when it is clear, is still a good thing, just from an impeccability point of view, just as a safety. So on these perceptions, though, to not just take the perception in and of itself as the all of it. No, the perception is there to stimulate awareness. Awareness then says, oh, what's the next step? Well, to be discerning, correct? We need to apply discernment to our awareness. That's how we get to understanding. And then after understanding, there's action, application, right? So when you see these as a starting point of this process, very powerful, right? Very, very powerful.
Mm.
So these perceptions, when you think they lead to ADU, in other words, first awareness, because you can be aware of it, but if you no discernment applied, then you also may miss things, right? So discernment, very key. And then through discernment, which is thinking about it, going into layers, looking at different contexts, all of the different tools of thinking and assessing and perceiving, then we get understanding. Once we have understanding, then we can act. Yes?
Yes.
All right. But now think of it this way. Look at it. I'm going over the same point from a whole bunch of different angles because it's a very, very, very key point. I mean, it's huge, right? So I'm really just doing repeat backs here of what you've been saying. Yes, that if you take the ADU part and you don't add it to the perception, what do you get? You get all of that wastedness that happened not just with you before, but you see it with people typically. They get the feeling, and some of them, right, some will disregard the feeling because, well, if it's a negative thought, they don't want to be a negative person, and then they throw it out. or they can be overconfident with their feelings and they act on them all the time, and then they also cause a lot of trouble, right? Because of that over false confidence. So the fact that people don't act with awareness, discernment, and understanding is a huge deal. And it typically starts with some kind of a feeling, whether this is a direct perception of energy feeling or not. Probably in some way it is just very far removed. But nonetheless, the fact that they don't act with awareness, discernment, and understanding makes all the difference. Yes. And then, of course, the application that follows after that. So if you think of these perceptions as a starting point, everything changes. Yes?
Mm.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, because it starts with a feeling.
It starts, that's the key, to say it starts with the feeling, which is a perception. Yes? And over time, you're going to learn to clarify that perception. Yes? But in the meantime, the process for clarifying means that you have to check and test and be very thorough so that you can build up your database. Yeah. Be very, very thorough. Very exciting, isn't it?
It is.
I just, for me, it's very exciting, all this. I mean, it's a simple little thing, this, but it's massively thorough. Massively thorough. In other words, now when we zoom out, and oh, one second. There we go. And we zoom out and we look at this from overview perspective, and we say, you know, what do we have here? We have this ability to perceive outside of the usual. Yes. In other words, to pick up more than what we may think we typically perceive and pick up and are connected to. Yes. And that's very exciting, is it not?
It really is, because
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. It's a massive big deal. Massive big deal. But it's just the same way as when I had a computer in way back in the day, and I did have a computer way back when computers were very new still, like in the early 80s, right? Or mid 80s. Anyway, and so a computer was a marvelous thing, of course. Then it was very new. But you had to program your computer yourself, and well, later there was software and all that. Anyway, but the computers were self-contained, right? So yes, my computer could do wonderful things, and I used that a spreadsheet, and I did all my accounting on the spreadsheet and all of the stuff. But that was the sum total of it. What was on my computer was what I had access to, right? Now, this is typically how most people go around in their lives, right? They aren't connected to the internet as people, right? The internet of people and awareness and feeling and all of this. But then when you do get connected to the internet, like when the internet did come along, right? Now suddenly, that I open up a window, and before, when I open up a window, it was a spreadsheet or a word processor or a database. Those were your three options, really, right? But now with the internet, you had, oh my goodness, well, just something like Google. And what happens, though, typically for people that now suddenly get to access the internet, they get a bit overwhelmed, right? You do a Google search and you get a million results and they don't know what to do. So we have to be aware and also understand just from Google searches that, well, yeah, you may get a million results, but it's 999,000 rubbish results. That don't mean anything. It's only there's not that many that are meaningful, right? So it is within our capabilities to check and test, and we don't have to get overwhelmed. That only seems overwhelming. So but the key is in these perceptions that you have, these feelings, is that they are essentially you connecting to the internet of people and beings and feelings and stuff, moreness, right? So the internet of the world, you could call it. Yes? The universal internet. Make sense, Robin?
I like that only seems overwhelming.
Yeah, it isn't really. I mean, any Google search, go to page 5 and see how much is relevant, or page 10. I mean, 10 pages, not very lot to scroll through, I mean, to check, right? If you had to check every result, I mean, mostly by the time you get to 10 or 20, it starts to become very remotely connected, right? Depending on what you're searching, obviously. But typically it falls off very quickly. So each successive one, beside maybe the first page, usually, right? I mean, typically now. So let's say the first 10 have really strong relevance to it. And you might not find it in the top one. It may be in the third or the fourth. That happens quite often for me, right? It all depends on the clarity of your search, in other words. But as you go further down, when you start getting to page 3, 4, 5, and 10, you get diminishing returns when it comes to the investment of your time and energy. Yes. So, right? I mean, you spend the same amount of time checking each link, but but the value that you get back is very low relative to the energy that you have to put in. So this is diminishing returns on your investment of time and energy. Yes. So at some point you say, well, you know what, I see I'm on a path of diminishing returns, and I've crossed that line where the reward is worth the effort. I get so little information on this, and or zero. In other words, I'm wasting my time and energy here, but okay, I'm being thorough. But after a while, you see the pattern, and then you can feel confident that you can let it go. You've researched enough, right? Now, of course, this all depends on how accurate your search was in the first place. You might go through 10 pages and not find what you're looking for because, well, your search was crap. Yes. So Google is a marvelous analogy here because we all understand Google. And I think, to me, the universe has brought Google in as an awareness tool to help us with our awareness, right? Because in today's world, if you don't have good search capabilities, you're going to struggle, right? If you're using a computer and you don't know how to use Google, you're going to really struggle, yes? So you see this with people. They put in a search and they're all over the show. They're not very clear in what they're searching for. And of course, they get unclear results, right? And one of the first sort of computer rules was garbage in, garbage out. It's a very big computer rule back in the 80s. And this is the same with Google. Now, how does this apply to what we're doing? That search is clarity of intent. Yeah, Robin?
Yes.
This is the key. If you don't have clarity of intent, then you can go through all your results. You may search 1,000 pages and say, "Oh, I've been so thorough," and still get everything all messed up. Why? Because you were being thorough on checking on bogus results that have nothing to do with anything because your intent was not clear. So it's very key to have good, appropriate search terms, search phrases, and understand how those searches works. In other words, know how intent works the same way. Intent is like that search that you put in your search terms that you put into Google. This is intent, the same thing. So your results are going to be profoundly determined by your intent. Yes.
All right, but you mentioned something that definitely piqued my attention. You said the words, see the pattern.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I know that that has been my ability.
Excellent. Excellent.
Um,
Excellent.
I don't know how to exactly say it in regards to every day,
Yeah.
but I do know that the reason why I'm able to get the things accomplished that I do, the reason that, and I'm using work here, my practice when I was working with Doc, why was I where I was and able to do the things I do? Because I could see the pattern.
Exactly. Exactly.
And because I was able to see the pattern,
Yeah.
I just always got the work done,
Yeah.
where I realized that others could not see the pattern and
Yeah.
they make more out of it than what it actually
Exactly.
is. Because
Ex-
why? Just figure out the pattern, you don't need the rest of it. But I
Exactly.
don't know if that's really a good thing or a bad thing either. So
Oh, no, it's a marvelous tool. So really what we're talking about is information processing. Right? A ton of information out there, huge. Look at the internet, right? And the key is that we've got to access this. And we aren't able to access it directly, right? So we have to have kind of a portal. And even so, though, we still end up with tons of information and tons of choices. So how do we clarify and get to the information that we want? First of all, right, you have to have that clarity of intent, which is your search. Know what you're looking for, and then be clear as to how you ask your questions, which is again how you frame your intent. Clarity of intent, absolutely key. If you're clear about what you want to get and how you getting there, how you asking your question, your search terms, then you automatically limit or narrow down that all that information profoundly, right? um, and then it's like, wow, okay, now I'm suddenly able to get to the information that I want to very, very quickly and directly. And I first one, there we go. Okay, this works for me. Now, obviously, a lot of times there's multiple. If I want to look up an author, for instance, I could find information about them on Goodreads, on Amazon, on Wikipedia, and so on. Right. So sometimes we can have multiple things, but it doesn't matter. I get to where I want to get. And it's very key. So this is all about narrowing the information, and the clarity of intent is a key to that. Now, what other tools do we have for taking this mass of information and narrowing it down? We have pattern. Pattern is a very profound mechanism. Including with pattern two is probability. Right? Probability to me is a very sacred, profound term that is very, very underutilized. Yes. But we need to understand, really, really understand probability. Right. So this is why Amazon, I'm sorry, or Google will give you 1 million results. All right. Sometimes, depending on your search, you will only get one page of results, right? Or even zero. That's very rare. But you typically get 1 million results. Why? Because the first one has the highest probability of connecting to what you searched for, right? And as you successively go down the list, the probability gets less and less and less and less. Now, if you are put in a query where you knew and you know that, well, I'm not sure what I'm asking for, then you know that you may find what you're looking for in a low probability result, lower down, right? Because you kind of fishing here. So understanding this thing of probability says, well, look, by the time I get to page 100, my probability is less than 1%. Okay, low probability of me getting what I want, so the effort doesn't merit the rewards, unless, of course, this is a life and death situation. Well, now it may be different, right? If you absolutely have to have this information, you keep going until you find it. It doesn't matter how low the probability is; it's in there somewhere. So understanding probability is a very big deal, and pattern is a huge part of that, right? So, and then, just since we're on this now, if you want to make notes on this, right? So when it comes to information processing, our tools are, of course, first of all, clarity of intent, right? In other words, asking the right question, putting in the right search terms, right? Which is the same thing as a question. So that's the first absolute key. And I'm focusing on this because that's where we are still on in redoing Way of Impeccability, right? See, I keep my clarity of intent too. Uh, and then the second thing is we have a pattern and we have probability, which is also percentages. You got three nice P's there, right? Pattern, probability, percentage, right? Those are, probability and percentage is kind of the same thing, just expressed differently, but very useful to know. And then we also had, um, oh, I mentioned it, but I forgot what it was now. I said earlier, other tool for processing information. It'll come to me. But that's what we want to do, is be aware that, you know, that is what we're doing, that we are processing, and that we have these tools available to us that we can use to wade through all the tons of information and reduce it and narrow it down. Yes.
Almost like keeping it simple, stupid.
Exactly. Yeah. If we always forget there's a comma after simple. The original expression of that was keep it simple, comma, stupid. They were calling you stupid. I mean, the expression was really keep it simple because you're stupid.
Right.
Which is good. We are, compared to the universe, we're totally stupid. Exactly. So I'm going to keep it simple. But this is a way of keeping it simple, precisely. But the key is that clarity of intent. Yes. And because with clarity of intent, you're going to start the other way around. You know, you're going to start with an overview and then narrow it down. And then from, you know, your search term is a narrow, and then you're going back out again into the moreness, right? And so you kind of go out and in, out and in. So this is very key, that when you're looking at intent, you want to have your intent be an intent that takes your entirety of your life into account, not just the narrowness of the particular. Yes. So it's very good to have that, because you can have an intent that satisfies your bubble, but doesn't satisfy your immediate or longer term life. Yes. But that happens all the time. Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example. You know, people get into relationships and they, you know, they take a shine to somebody and they're like, wow, man, they're so beautiful and they're so wonderful and this will make me look cool. And, you know, oh, I'll you know, everybody will think I'm so wonderful because I've got this wonderful partner and they're so beautiful or handsome or whatever. In other words, very shallow reasons. I mean, it sounds dreadful when I say it, and it sounds so preposterous and ludicrous when I voice it, but it really happens inside people's heads, right? They get together and marry somebody simply because they attractive. Yes. And it's not that they like the attractiveness. Yes, they do, but it's what the attractiveness does for them, right? It boosts them, give them status, gives them approval from others, blah blah. But of course, how long is that going to last, right? You know, I mean, the odds of that lasting very long aren't very high, correct? So, of course, the thing implodes because they satisfied an immediate goal, which was their status and ego, and forgot the longer life goal of, hey, you know, you need to be somebody that you actually like, that you actually can get on with. They didn't even think of any of that. No, they just wanted to marry somebody that was pretty and beautiful because this gave them the benefits of it. They didn't think ahead. They didn't look at the bigger perspective. Right? I don't know why this example comes into my head, but there's, you know, tons of examples where people do things for a short-term immediate benefit and don't think of the longer-term consequences. Yeah. So you want to look at your entire life. Yeah. And then, you know, if you set your intent to take care of the immediate, intermediate, and long-term, and your life context, all of them, now you're talking about an intent that does all of them. Right? It's very powerful. Very, very powerful. Yes. Robin?
Uh-huh.
Right. I'm just saying, in terms of setting an intent like this, yes, to set, you know, to have an intent that has the broadness and the focus both together. Yes.
I wrote it down as clarity of intent, overview,
Yes.
narrowing it down, and then zooming out again.
Exactly. Exactly. So that your intent is an intent that satisfies the immediate, the intermediate, the long term, and the life context, right? Or the universal context, which is your life in its entirety, not just, now and, what happens beyond your life, right? When you look at that, when I'm saying life context, it's like everything, the life now, afterlife, alternate lives, whatever, right? So when you take all of those contexts into consideration, then you have something very powerful. In other words, if you really
Interesting you're
understand.
saying this
Say
because
again.
it's interesting that you're saying it in this way because this has been coming into my awareness recently.
Ah,
The awareness of death
yeah.
and how people perceive death. It's very interesting that you're saying this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, I wrote a little story. It's kind of a fun story. Two friends go sailing. So I used to do a lot of sailing when I was a kid. So I thought, yeah, I'll write something where I can utilize my understanding of sailing. But anyway, so they have a conversation while they're doing this. It's kind of fun. So the conversation is the one says to the other that, I have this philosophy, and as well, I'm still working on. It's kind of a bit of a fanciful philosophy. But anyway, they're just chatting, they're hanging out, they're having fun sailing. And so he throws this idea out. He says, well, in this philosophy, we live to die. Oh, that's kind of different. He said, yeah, well, how does this work now? Well, it is to live in and understand that this is what the philosophy is positing, is speculating, or the philosophy assumes that we are here to unhook from our desire for physicality, right? So we need to learn to want death, because our intent and the intent that has led to this particular type of life is a flawed intent. Wow. Okay. Well, how could you mean that? So, well, okay. So when we were out there in the void, and we had an intent, we had a conception for life. This is what we came up with, physical life. But we didn't really think it through to the end. So, well, if you're going to have a physicality and you're going to eat, well, you're going to have to go to the bathroom and all of the other stuff that comes with. Well, okay, that's kind of messy. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Now that I think about this, it's not ideal. We accept this. But if I had a choice, are there other types of life that I could choose that maybe are a little bit more streamlined, but more energy efficient, and also to have a life that a world, a universe. We're talking about, when you start from the void, one idea, your intent has consequences, and it creates the whole reality that you're in. So you have to be very careful. Now, if you, believe in predation or hierarchy or superiority paradigm, well, you're going to get this kind of world, you see. So what would a world be like where there are no predators? That'd be a very different world, no? And where you consumed your energy in a way that wasn't physical like that, but in some other way, where, then you don't have the downsides of, well, the hassle of eating. And okay, it's fun, but it still, takes time and energy. But also, the things that go with it, you know, and the body and diseases, and going to the bathroom and all this stuff, right? So when you start to think in this way, you say, wow, okay, I'm now learning to look at life to see not only the benefits but also the limitations of this type of life. And when I see the profound limitations, I learn to want to not have it, which is wanting death, which is now you want death so that you can reset the paradigm. Of course, it's a fanciful philosophy which assumes that you can reset the paradigm, but all right. Just my point that I make in sharing this is that when it comes to death, it's not so clear cut. And when we start thinking about things, it changes the whole paradigm. All right. So that's one perspective. Another perspective is when we take the E equal mc squared perspective, right? And we spoke about this before, and you rearrange those elements to get a bit more clarity. It's a pity that he said it as E is equal to mc squared. If he'd said that as M is equal to E divided by C squared, that would change everything. People would connect much more to the profound spiritual significance of equal mc squared, because M, which is matter, is energy divided by speed of light squared. Speed of light squared is not an infinite number, it's just a very large number. So you've got matter is energy divided by a very large number. Now, what does that mean? That's how you get matter, by taking energy and dividing it by a very large number. So what does dividing by a very large number mean? It just means slowing it down, right? Or fragmenting it. That's all it means, really. So here we have the secret of how reality gets formed by energy being slowed down. What is that slowing down mechanism? Or what could it be? Nowhere in physics does anyone ever say exactly how the slowing down takes place. In my perspective, in my understanding, it is consciousness, awareness, that is that slowing down mechanism.
Hmm.
Mm. In the beginning, there was the word on the face of the void, or the word that moved through the void, right? So if you take one word and you drop it into a void, what happens? The word is a conception. Pick any word, doesn't matter what it is, right? Pick a word, one word to put into the void.
All right, let's use conception.
Okay, so what does conception imply? Well, it implies there is something that conceives it, correct? You can't have conception without the conceiver.
Hmm.
Right? Well, right there, you just created people, brains. You created an awareness. You created some kind of an entity. You created a something that is capable of conception. Yes. See?
Yeah.
Now, well, okay. What kind of, you see how it starts to feed off each other, right? Everything is connected to everything else. You cannot have a thing in isolation. It doesn't exist, right? So the moment you conceive of anything, you bring along with it the entire universe that supports that. Now, you picked a very interesting one, because conception could be something that could be conceived by a machine. It could be conceived by a magnetic entity that's they constructed of magnetism, right? Or light or electric. So you've now opened up a whole range of possible alternate or types of reality, because you said concept. Had you said chair, you limited to a physicality. I mean, there's only so many things that can sit in a chair, right? I mean, when you take a chair, it's not made for dogs, yeah,
Right.
or kangaroos or spiders or whatever. So a chair, you can infer a particular type of a physicality, and so if you'd said chair as your word, you're already creating a universe that's pretty much got humanoids in it. Yes. Now, okay, humanoids can go a long way, but still, you see what I mean, though. The word does shape the reality. You chose one that's very broad and open. This is very, very powerful. So it's really, really very, very useful to understand this. But the point I'm making is in terms of death, though, right? So when we have this understanding, and we understand that matter is a matter of conception, right? It's fantastic that you use this word, because that is what it is. M is equal to E divided by C squared. This is the statement of the magic of conception. It is how, what conception does. Conception shapes reality. Yes?
Hmm.
Now we say, okay, in death, what might happen if I lose my physicality? Yeah, you say, well, you know, the physicality supports my consciousness and my awareness. But so if my body dies, well, then so does my consciousness. Is that necessarily true?
No.
No. And how do we know this, right? Because if I take a flashlight and I shine it up out into the sky, yes, and I switch off the flashlight, right? Does the light that was sent from it, does that light then cease? No, it continues traveling out into the universe, whether the flashlight is switched off or broken or not. Yes. It's like we see light from stars that have already died. Yeah.
Hmm.
So at some point in time, it will cease to produce the light, but the light it did produce exists independently of the star. Same thing with a flashlight. Yeah. So what is your brain but an electromagnetic generator? It puts out electromagnetic energy, right? Brainwaves, literally. That's what they are. They're like your light is an electromagnetic waveform, right? So magnet, all of these things, they're all electromagnetic waves of some kind. You know, gravity, they're all in the same spectrum. So my point is that if you can produce light and the light can exist independent of the flashlight, yes, why can't you do the same with your brain?
Isn't that where unconscious, like this is now where we're getting into that unconscious and conscious and awareness and unawareness?
Kind of, but I'm going somewhere with this, right? So I want to make a few more points on this. This is a very big point, this, and it ties back again to clarity of intent, right? So now we say, all right, yes, well, my brain produces the waves, but like the flashlight, literally a flashlight, yes, you put that flashlight out, the light goes on. That's a very diffuse light, right? I mean, that beam, it spreads as it goes. So the further away it gets from the flashlight, the more it spreads out, and after a while you won't even see it. Like if you're way out in space and you put your flashlight on, by the time the light gets to you, it may not even hit you because the light is so dispersed. You may be in the gaps and the light goes past you, right? So it's not very effective. There's no coherency, in other words. However, if you take a tight beam laser, you can put that on and shoot that beam into space, and it will keep going forever, literally, until it meets something and it gets absorbed, right? So if you happen to be in the path of that laser, well, okay, you'll see the laser beam. It won't disperse, right? Because it's a tight beam, it's focused. What are we talking about? What's our theme? Our overview theme? What module session? We're on clarity of intent, yes?
Okay.
See what I'm saying? So a laser beam, when you think of a laser beam compared to a flashlight, and you look at people and you think of their brains, most people are putting out just this light and it dissipates and it doesn't go very far. Yes. And the more focused you become, the more focused your flashlight becomes, right? And eventually you get tight
I'm
beam.
getting it with that clarity of intent. You got to be a laser beam.
Precisely. Be a laser with your clarity of intent. Exactly. So if we have our intent so focused, so laser focused, so clear, that it's so tight that it can exist on its own without the laser and not disperse. Now let's add one more factor to this laser beam. What if that laser beam is not only tight, but also self-aware? Now you've got a whole other factor. If that laser beam is able to adjust itself and maintain its coherency, now that laser beam could likely move. This is not very far-fetched at all.
Well, now you're coming back to choice.
Precisely, but it's about the coherency of being. We want to have this clarity of intent when it comes to who and how we are. Yes?
Yeah, but I'm hearing that word choice. It comes back to who and how we are, which now comes back to that freedom of choice.
Exactly.
You have to choose, but there's now a impeccability about this choice. There's a respectfulness about this choice. This is now about a laser beam awareness.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, if you actually have freedom of choice, that means that you get to act and not be acted on. The less freedom of choice you have, the more dispersed you are, and the more you are subject to the whims of circumstance. Yes? Right? The greater your freedom of choice, simultaneously, the greater your independence. Right? The greater your coherence, your coherency of being. Do you see the connection?
All right, so now a laser beam, you're talking more focused. A flashlight is more dispersed.
Correct, correct. But let's make this point about freedom of choice, right? Freedom of choice, when we think freedom, we think, well, the more freedom I have, the more dispersed I am. But actually
No,
not.
I actually look at it the other way. Freedom of choice is
That's what I'm
actually
saying.
more
Exactly.
focused.
Exactly. The more focused we are, the greater our freedom of choice. Right. And when we have maximum freedom of choice, that's when we have independence of being. Right. In other words, if I'm completely free to choose, I'm not influenced by outside things, which means I'm not being dispersed. I'm tight. I'm focused. I have coherency. Right. I'm cohesive. Now, my cohesiveness doesn't mean that I'm narrow and limited either. My cohesiveness means I get to choose. This is what I'm saying with a laser beam. We want to take our analogy where we have an aware laser beam that's able to determine its own movement, its own shape, its own configuration, right? Many ways to be light, right? Laser is only one of them, yes? Or many ways to be energy. Light is just one form of energy, yes? See what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So when we really master clarity of intent, we are also going to be masters of reality, because it is intent, consciousness, conception, which is what creates reality. M is E divided by C squared, right? It is intent, it is conception, it is awareness, which is shaping that reality. Of course, the greater the clarity of the intent, the more focused, the more precise the matter is, the M part is. Yes? See what I'm saying, Robin?
Mm-hmm.
So the greater our ability to have clarity of intent, the greater our ability to create and have an M, a matter that is a matter that we choose.
Which actually just brought up now attachment.
Exactly.
You can't have
Exactly.
attachment because now that's narrowing and dispersing at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Say again on attachment. Keep going. Elaborate a bit more. I'm not following you 100%. I intuitively get what you want, but I want to hear you think it through rather than me doing it.
Well, with the attachment, you're looking at narrowing and dispersing.
Yes.
Whereas non-attachment is actually focused
but open at the same time.
It is. All right, so let's go back to attachment. It's narrowing, it's dispersing, it's limiting.
The moment you
Wow,
attach,
this is interesting because this is now where you have that oppositeness going on.
yes, yes,
This is now where you have attachment is narrowing, limiting, and focused
yes,
versus non-attachment,
yeah,
which is moreness.
yes,
It is dispersed and full.
yes, 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 yes,
This is
yes,
duality.
yes. Very profound, very profound.
This is duality at its core.
Yeah, yeah.
This is that duality of nothing as it is appears. Nothing is as it seems.
It's marvelous. It's a very magical thing, right? So when we look at attachment, bring choice into it and freedom, and then the magic of attachment will
Right.
really
But
come
now you,
here.
I mean, when you look at it, attachment is the flashlight.
It's a lack of freedom.
Non-attachment is the laser beam,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yet they have completely different meanings.
Yes, yes. And the key to understanding attachment is that the moment we attached, we give up freedom of choice, right?
Right.
And the moment you give up freedom of choice, you give up independence of being.
Right.
And the moment you give up independence of being, you being beam, you give up coherency of being, right? And when you give up coherency, you get into that dispersed, vague flashlight that's, yes, it's good in the short term, but doesn't go very far. And it just disperses and falls apart, right? And this is how you see people's lives are. When you really kind of press on them a little bit, you see that how they are doesn't go very far. When they start to explain themselves, it falls apart. Right? Because it disperses like that, right? They can't really balance and justify all the stuff that they think and do and are. Right? So, so to have independence of being, to have freedom, also means we have coherency of being. It seems a bit counterintuitive, yes, and
Yeah.
contradictory, but it's a huge deal to understand this. That if you want to have maximum freedom, you also need to have maximum coherency of being. Yes. And what does coherency of being mean in actuality, right? I always say, all right, these are grand conceptions, but what does it mean really in my day-to-day application? Coherency of being means impeccability, which means character, which means your dictionary of power, your self-conception. Remember when when we'll get back to self-conception again. So we want to have a self-conception that is at the same time super laser tight, but also has fluidity. So we want to be a laser beam that can change direction, that can change shape and form, right? We always have our coherency, but we also have fluidity and flexibility and adaptability, ability to be appropriate. Yes. So we want to be, yes, a laser beam if needed, but really what we are, we're an electromagnetic uh, um, entity, you could say, right? That's it. We're energy, and we are learning to shape our energy as appropriate. If it's a laser beam, fine. If we need to shift to be magnetic because we want to bounce off the magnetosphere of a planet or gravity, and well, there we go. Right. So this is how I can travel, by changing my my gravitational force, right? To attract, repel, whatever. So I'm just saying, just to get a bit more specific. But the point is that we are able to be fluid and flexible and adaptable, not because we don't have coherency, but because we do. And our coherency comes from our impeccability and that clarity of intent. Every single entry into your dictionary of power is an example of intent being clarified. Yes?
It's really interesting that you're bringing up this fluidity, because I would say darn near all my clients last week, the sacral, that second chakra was coming up, and that's fluidity.
Interesting. Interesting indeed. Very interesting. Very interesting. So the big point here is that to bring this back in and just to again maintain our clarity of intent. What are we talking about? Is that you brought up death and the importance of death. And when we see death in a different light, when we see death as leaving the flashlight behind or the laser pointer, oh, now it changes everything. If I do not want to disperse on death, right, and basically fade out. Look, for most people, the flashlight, they have to have it on all the time, right? This is what life is typically for most people, correct?
Mm-hmm.
But the moment you switch off the flashlight, well, the light doesn't go very far, it disperses, and that's the end of it. Yes?
Okay.
But if we have coherency, if we have independence of being, now we can continue to maintain our identity like the laser beam, regardless of whether the laser pointer exists or not. It's a very big difference, right? Very, very, very big difference. So now on death, we don't disperse because we have enough coherency and independence of being to be the equivalent of the laser beam, to maintain our self and identity. But it's not a self of personality, because personality is context specific, right? Personality comes and goes. Well, I'm at a party, I'm happy and joyful. That's my personality then. But I go to a funeral, I'm sad as appropriate. Well, depending on the funeral, right? I just use this for example. But you see my point, though. So personality is something which is very precise. You can't rely on personality, because when you go out into the universe, who knows what you're going to encounter, right? So you can't cling to a personality, because that's not going to help you very much if you don't encounter those circumstances. But character, this applies in any circumstance. Yes, doesn't matter. So it's character that gives us coherency, not personality. Yeah. Think of it as your computer, right? Whereas your personality would be the stuff that's on your hard drive. But really, when the computer reboots, you can unplug the hard drive and put in a new one, and the computer can work with a new hard drive. Yes, because the operating system is independent of the hard drive. Right? Well, depending on how your computer is set up, but still, the point is there, right? So this is very important to understand, that we want to have a setup that is a setup like, well, if you want to really get technical in the computer, it's stored in a little hardware chip in your CMOS or in your BIOS. It's hard-coded, the thing that boots the computer. Now, it may not actually be an operating system. It's very basic. It's something that looks for an operating system, and then it finds it, and it runs the operating system. But still, there is something, it's hard-coded into your computer, that when you switch it off and you remove the batteries and everything, next time you start it up again, well, it can start things, right? It has that core. And that's what we're looking to with our clarity of intent and our core, our conception, our character. We just want to have it a bit more sophisticated. It's not just, well, it's looking for an operating system, which kind of is what we can do to say, well, whatever is appropriate. And that's fine. Sure. I start up and I look for whatever is appropriate, and life is very easy. which is why appropriateness is such a powerful term. It's that boot up code instruction. Look for what's appropriate. Well, how do I know what's appropriate? Well, first of all, I have to assess the circumstances, the environment, the context, and then I have to say, what do I want? And when I say, well, what do I want? Well, what I want depends on the context. So appropriateness takes clarity of intent and context, circumstance into account. That's how you get to appropriateness. So it's very simple basics, right? But when we have these basics, we can function in any circumstance. And when we have other basics, in other words, we have impeccability, things like patience and discipline and understanding and awareness and discernment and all of the other tools in the dictionary of power, those help you no matter what circumstance, what reality you're in, right? Doesn't matter. Yes? See where I'm going with this, all this, Robert?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So way of impeccability is set up very specifically to not only deal with life and living now today, but also to deal with the issue of death. This is its intent. It's in it. It's very specific, right? We want to live in such a way that we take care of both. So our this character that we're building, these tools that we're developing, they help us not only in our day-to-day, but they're preparing us for whatever might be. Okay, I want to jump just a little bit. It's on the same topic, but just share something that's very profound to me that I don't think a lot of people realize. And it's this concept of heaven and hell. Yes. And think of it this way, right? If you die, and in that time of the transition, right? If you have this belief in you that, well, never mind a belief, whether you believe in heaven or hell or not, if you've got a conscience that is troubled and plagued and bothered, and a knowledge that you've been crappy and horrible, right? And you thinking of all this horrible negative stuff, people who do horrible negative things, they believe inside themselves, they have a very negative world view, right? They believe things are crappy and horrible, and you've got to dominate, you've got to take, and all this, right? So they have a very ugly conceptuality if they criminals and murderers and whatever, they're bad people, right? I'm saying bad people have a bad view of the world. Yeah. So if you now go into that transition, and you're now in a space where your mindset, your intent, in other words, your view, your worldview, has a very direct effect on your reality, what's the likelihood of you creating a negative reality? You see what I mean? So if you've lived a bad life, likely when you in this m is equal to e divided by c squared, when you start and you get into that fluidity, and you have fluidity, and you have this ability now, or it's just going to happen of its own accord, that what you think, what you feel, what you believe creates your reality. Well, bad people create bad realities. Yes.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So
Yep.
just when we take this whole concept that we are talking about, our intent, our understandings, our coherencies of being, how we are, how this affects our reality, we now start to see, oh, well, heaven and hell is basically a self-proving conception, right? We're going to end up in whatever reality, kind of reality we believe in, right? And how we believe things work. So we may, or not may, likely we are now in a reality that is a consequence of our beliefs and ideas and understandings of how things work. Yes. So as we go along with way of impeccability, we also are looking at, it's a path of awareness, a path of discernment, a path of understanding. Why? so that we have this understanding of the deepness of how things work, so that should this be how it works. Now, I cannot say absolutely 100% so, but I have every logical, rational, and lots of examples too of saying this is how it works. We want to be able to be in a position where we shape our realities based on our inner sensibility and inner positivity and a deep, powerful intent of moreness. Yes. And this is why that concept moreness is so incredibly profound, right? Because moreness versus the unknown. Simply, if I were to transition and die, in other words, right? But now I'm transitioning with moreness. It's a deep concept inside me. The new reality I create is a reality of moreness, not unknown. It's a very different thing, right? Yes, it's still unknown to me. I'm not, but it's moreness, right? It's a very profound magicalness. So all of this, there's a deep sensibility to it when we combine it all together, right? And it starts with this clarity of intent. Know what it is that you're doing, and everything changes. So what is it that we are doing in life? We are living to the best of our ability, and that living, though, is not only for getting value now, but also as we live and figure out how to live, we are also figuring out how we want to live and what kind of reality we wish to live in, right? See what I'm saying, Rowan?
Oh, yeah.
So this is a very, very, very profound conception, this. And that clarity of intent, in other words, is so key because, it shapes everything to come and what could come, what might come, right? We could end up, and death comes and the flashlight goes and, well, the light disperses and that's the end of stuff. However, if we have that clarity, that focus, that cohesion, that independence of being, now we get to maintain ourselves into death, through transition, and then it becomes a transition, not an ending. Yes.
Hmm.
Makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's huge, no? We'll come back to this much, right? Don't worry if it seems maybe not all the steps are connected. I mean, it is, but it isn't, right? It seems
No,
a bit all
because
over the show right
where I've
now.
kind of stopped at is with at the very end there. Transition versus end.
Exactly. We want to set up conditions so that we have maximize our chances of transitioning rather than ending. I cannot be sure that this is what's going to happen, but I don't want to take any chances either. This is my impeccability, right? I don't leave things to chance, right? So I'm going to stack the odds in my favor of transitioning rather than ending. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And this is what way of impeccability is all about, right? So now we're very clear as to what we are doing. This is our intent, is to get to that point where we can have all the odds in our favor of transitioning. However, we're going to have an additional intent. I'm not going to sacrifice my joy in my day to day for this goal, because this goal, it might turn out that I don't have any ability to affect this. And when I die, it's the end. It's like, that's it, right? So there is that chance. And I think the universe has set things up this way so that we don't live an entire life of sacrifice for something in the future, which is a poor strategy. You need to have an optimal strategy, which says optimal strategy gives me moreness now and moreness in the future. In other words, I am enough and I am also more. We want them both to coexist, right? Because to live constantly sacrificing for the future it's a miserable way to live. And you can do this for eternity, right? Because there's always going to be more to pursue. And this is a terrible mindset to be in. Yes, you're going to waste every single precious second of your awareness. So way of impeccability is about doing both. It's about optimizing and maximizing now and making sure that you are optimizing the future as well. Yes. Very key point, Robin. Very, very, very key point. Yes.
Yes. So
Think
let's
of
stop
people who
there.
have right. The typical. Think of, for instance, this point that I'm making about sacrifice for the future being pointless. Think of humanity as a whole, particularly parents and children. Right? Why do people have children? They have children. Well, I'm going to have children, and then once they have the children, they say, well, my whole life is doing everything for my children. Yeah, okay, well, that's very good. And then what? Well, they never have thought, and then what? But then what that actually happens is the children come, and the children have children, and they do the exact same thing. They sacrifice everything for their children. And then those children do and if you go back in time, this is what parents have been doing for their children, and then the children become parents, and then they do the same thing, and it just repeats over and over and over again. Who ever benefits from that? Nobody. All of them are always perpetually sacrificing for the future. Yeah. See what I mean, Robin?
Oh yeah.
So now it's like, well, this is a really pointless way of doing things. I mean, if nobody's going to benefit from this ever, if everybody's just going to be sacrificing for the future, this is totally mindless. It makes no sense whatsoever. So it's like, whoa, that puts a whole new spin on the whole thing of sacrificing for your kids, right? And it's like, come on, no, somebody has to benefit at some point. So we want to optimize. Yes, I want to have the best for my kids, but I also want to have joy in doing so, and them to have joy from my sacrifice. Otherwise, it's just pointless. So this is the same thing for us when it comes to our lives and impeccability and our intent for the future. We want to have the intent to enjoy now to the maximum and optimize our odds for the future being the best it possibly can be and being the best possible odds, right? So we are being utmost strategic, right? We're applying the most maximized, most optimized strategy possible, right? We are having everything in our favor, all of it. Now, the intermediate, the long term, the future, the forever, eternal, everything. Yes, makes sense?
Yes.
Very powerful, very powerful. We're not playing around here. You know what I mean? It's like we really are looking to get the maximum out of things, and this is what moreness is all about, of course, right? It's a very, very profound understanding, and it's a very different way of attaining perfection. This is how I started my journey, was about perfection. And, I asked people what they thought. I did a whole long, big study on this. Well, what do you think? Well, perfection would be boring. Can you say that again, please? And they would actually say it. Oh, no, perfection would be boring. You realize then it wouldn't be perfect if it was boring. Oh, yeah. Oh, I realized I just said something totally stupid. I realized I said something that I never thought about at all. I just repeated what I'd heard before. Well, and at that point, I had to run away, typically, because they were mostly older people who weren't amused at at becoming aware that they'd been stupid. Right. So, perfection, of course, is attainable. Perfection is what you decide is optimum for you, right? And this is a very different thing within your capabilities of choice, obviously. And, an ideal perfection would be one from which you had the power to change anything at all, but would not. Wouldn't that be a perfect circumstance?
Yeah, that was pretty good.
That was my definition that I came up with for perfection. I said, perfection is a state of being from which, if you had the power to change anything at all, You would not. That's exactly how I came to my definition of my very, very first act of philosophizing way back when I was 10 years old. So this is a very profound understanding. And all it was is I wasn't some, special, ridiculous genius or everything. No, all I did was simply, the concept of perfection came up. And I simply thought about it and I went step by step and I figured it out. It wasn't all that difficult. It's just A to B to C to D, and then you just keep going. Right? It didn't take any great big skills or thing. I didn't just like immediately. No, I just a little bit of extra effort and work, right? Anybody could do it. Like I said, I was a 10-year-old and I did it. There's no great feat, really. I mean to emphasize this. Anybody could do it if they'd had the thought to make the effort to do it, which is what I did, right? So I just had that, okay. I guess in my bubble, nobody said, oh, you can't do this. And that's a very big thing. I didn't have that limitation on me. And that I did lots of things because of that. It was very, very powerful in my life. Anyway, so perfection is very attainable. And this is what we're aiming for. We're aiming to maximize now, maximize the future perfection, right? So, as part of my perfection, I very much like variability. And so, well, you know what? I said, oh, perfection would be the same all the time. Only if you want it to be that way. Well, I might say, okay, so I have, I find a state of being where I have ecstasy from moment to moment. And I don't remember the previous moment. So I have a new ecstasy every moment, but it's the same all the time. All right, well, if I can exist in perpetual ecstasy for the rest, well, it may be the same, but who cares? It's a superlative, it's a maximum. So there are many ways to attain perfection, right? Very, very possible. So anyway, those are, kind of variations and fiddlinesses on it, but I throw them out because it makes us think a little bit,
Oh
that
no,
break
this is,
these
this is
patterns
right
of
up my
thinking.
alley.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wonderful stuff. It's wonderful stuff. Now, of course, if you are going to be the downside or potential downside of feeling a superlative feeling only, right? Rapture, bliss, elation, exaltation, ecstasy, awe, wonder, all of those, right? Is that if that's all you are feeling 100%, yes, that means I'm not aware of other things, which makes me vulnerable. So
Exactly.
yes, to have this perpetual feeling of a superlative, this is wonderful if you can be assured of your safety, right? So but you could get ecstasy and bliss from being aware of everything, and then it takes care of everything. So now I've got my ecstasy, my superlative feeling, in other words, or feelings plural, come from being aware of everything. If I'm aware of everything and all my surroundings and everything around me, well, then I'm automatically also going to be aware of the dangers potentially. Yes.
Yep.
Right. So that's huge. That's huge. So if we do this, we combine safety and maximum joy. All right, life is easy. Well, this is a wonderful end goal. Right? Strive for maximum awareness, and you take care of everything. You get your maximum feelings, superlative feelings, and you get your maximum security, right? And maximum awareness of option as well, right? This is why, our goals, our intent is awareness, right? And why the universe's intent is awareness, right? This is it. Everything, the universe is all geared towards enhancement and development of awareness, right? So all of what we want, all of the resolutions to our problems, all come from awareness, all of them. Yes?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now we know what we're doing. Yes. We are
Now we're
looking.
aware of what we're doing.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And what we are doing is we are essentially seeking perfection. How do we get perfection? Through awareness. Very simple.
We could pick this up on Thursday then.
Yes, yes, yes. It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful point. So this, I keep bringing it back to clarity of intent. And, this time as we go through it, I'm making every effort to go through all of the side paths that lead from it. Clarity of intent is super, super critical. Absolutely critical. Everything is determined by it. Super wonderful, Robert. Super, super, super magically wonderful.
All right. Sounds good. And I will see you on
Found stuff
Thursday.
to think about. Yes.
Yeah.
All
Oh,
right.
yeah.
So if you do have time, by the way, if you find yourself with some time spare, do the tasks and exercises at the very end of the session, right? They're very important, right? They're huge. They're huge. They're really a big deal. And I'll show you real quick before you go. Okay, these here, right? And there was a little bit more before it. It says end session 1. All right, put together a takeaway, but you can skip that if you want to, of the module, but you can if you want to as well. But then write down your personal intents for doing the Wave Impeccability program and your life intents. Now, a very simple little sentence there, but this is a big deal. I mean, it's two tasks really, right? Very big deal. Very, very big deal. So yeah, please at some point do this. Very important. Then make a list of all your beliefs which significantly impact your life. Again, it seems very simple, but oh my goodness, right? And then which impact your life, and then beliefs which are important to you. Two different ones, right? You may have beliefs that impact your life, but aren't important to you. Right? So that's a big deal. Then create another list of what activities or behaviors in your life take significant time and energy. Again, kind of another 2 lists, right? Activities, behaviors, but all right, it could be 1. But these are, right, they sort of 3, which could be 6 tasks, but it's very huge deal, this. Very, very huge deal. To do this fully and thoroughly is transformative. I cannot emphasize enough how powerful and important this is. Right? So, take your time on doing them. We have no rush. It's not for next time. I mean, you take a month or 2 or 3 or longer. It doesn't matter how long you take to do this, but doing it is massively valuable. Massively valuable. Very important. All right,
Okay.
Robin?
Sounds good.
Yes. Oh, so love it. So love it. So love it.
All right. Then
It's
I
so,
will see you on Thursday morning.
yes.
Okay.
Magic, man. This was so magical, Robin. Truly, I cannot emphasize how magical it was for me. Yeah.
Got it.
Very.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye, Robin. Bye-bye.